On this edition with Read with Ronald, I read the rest of the God Don't Like Ugly series, which is God Ain't Blind, God Ain't Through Yet, and God Don't Make No Mistakes. Post-production Ronald here. This video was originally supposed to be all 3 books in one video, but what had happened was I got done editing it. When I finished editing it, the final length was 3 hours long. So instead of giving y'all one 3-hour long video, I decided to give y'all 3 1-hour long videos. Each book is gonna get its own video, but as you're watching, just keep in mind that this was all supposed to originally be one video. Honestly, I had no plans on finishing this series. After I read the sample chapter for God Ain't Blind, I was like, I don't want to read this because it's gonna be a rehash of God Don't Play. Somewhere along the line about April, I was like, I kind of want to finish the series just to see like what else is gonna happen, because I felt like the series was starting to fall off, but I decided to go ahead and give it a chance and see how the rest of the series would go. I suggest that you go watch the first 3 videos on the first 3 books so you can get the full understanding of what's going on in the series. So let's get into the rest of this series. It's June 6th. It's a little after 1:30 in the morning, and I knew it. I am reading God Ain't Through Yet, which is the 5th book in the God Don't Like Ugly series, and I knew Pee-wee was gonna do something to get back at Annette for cheating on him. The book starts in Richland in 1997. Pee-wee strolls into the house with this girl named Elizabeth, who is a friend of both him and Annette, and she works as a manicurist at his barbershop, and Annette is the one who got her the job. They all grew up together in Richland. Elizabeth wasn't that popular, just like Annette, so Annette took pity on her. She got her the job. She even encouraged her to get a makeover and stuff like that. They was cool. I'm finna bop Pee-wee in the back of his head. It's a few months after Annette cheated on Pee-wee. They've been working on the marriage. Pee-wee was adamant that they not get a divorce and that they try to work things out. Annette says that Pee-wee's been bending over backwards to try and make things right again, trying to make things work, as if he was the one that cheated when it was Annette, but he's the one that's working really hard to get the marriage back on track. She's appreciative of this effort, and she feels like they're gonna be all right again, right? This man rolls into the house with Elizabeth right before she getting ready to go to work. So Annette's like, oh, what's going on? She thinking they come in there to talk about planning their next little cookout, because that's what they do. They plan cookouts and have cookouts together. They come in there, they looking at her all strangely, they looking all guilty and stuff. They looking at each other. They like, Annette, we got to tell you something. And she's like, what's going on? She getting worried, right? Elizabeth's like, I'm in love. And Annette noticed that she kind of like clinging to Pee-wee and stuff like that. She like, you in love with who? Y'all, why Pee-wee done had a whole affair with Elizabeth, his manicurist that got the job through Annette. So Annette is heartbroken. She is pissed. She is like, what is going on? She thinking they joking at first, but they're not joking. And so she says like that Pee-wee keep looking at her strangely. I feel like it's something else going on, because this don't make sense. Why would Pee-wee cheat on Annette when he has made it clear several times he don't love nobody else but her and he's not going nowhere? And he had an opportunity to go somewhere after he found out about the affair, but he decided to stay. Annette is heartbroken. She is upset. And she keep asking, why are you doing this? Why are you leaving me? They won't say. But Lizzie throwing jabs at Annette. Pee-wee, he throwing in some jabs too, but he just looking guilty. And Annette is just confused. She heartbroken, and she starts throwing hands. So Annette and Pee-wee, they get to arguing. Of course, Pee-wee brings up her affair from a few months ago. And Annette's like, you knew why I did that, and you said we could move past that. In her mind, she's like, if he had just left me after the affair, I would have been hurt, but I would have been all right, because I don't need no man. If he had left me, I would have understood. But she's like, why get my hopes up about fixing our marriage and then a few months later leaving me? Everybody apparently knew about Pee-wee and Elizabeth, and they had been dropping hints to Annette trying to warn her that he was cheating on her, but she wouldn't believe them because she was like, not Pee-wee. Pee-wee would never cheat. But nah, he cheating. He's been miserable the whole time, and he ready to go. It's like he's stalling though. Like he's like, I can't get my stuff, but he's stalling. He keep checking on Annette, seeing if she's all right, talking about she look unwell. Do I need to call a doctor? Do I need to call a pastor? So that's why I'm like, is it something else going on? Like, is it something that's like he don't want to leave, but he's being forced to? Like he being blackmailed into leaving her to be with Elizabeth? Do Elizabeth got something on him and he's leaving Annette because he trying to protect her? I'm like, what's going on? Because it's not adding up with Pee-wee's character after he been doing all of this stuff to try and make the marriage. I mean, it makes sense. I've heard stories of people trying to make the marriage work and it just didn't work after something as heavy as an affair, so they decided to just part ways. But Pee-wee never let on that something was wrong, including up to a few hours before he popped up in the house with Elizabeth talking about, I'm leaving you. I want to pop him. But I can't really be on Annette's side either, because Annette, you did this in the last book. I'm just a third party observing y'all foolishness. Annette gets it throwing down. She started beating on both of them. She beating on them inside the house. She beating on them outside the house. The neighbors out in the yard watching. They laughing like it's a show. Pee-wee takes off with Elizabeth. And I'm just like, what in the world did I come in on? And also, the way he left her is like reminiscent of the first time they slept together in the first book, where he showed up, he slept with Annette, and then he disappeared in the morning. No goodbye, no nothing. It's the same way. They slept together the night before, then he come back with Elizabeth talking about, I'm leaving you. And so, of course, Tati, since we read the first two books together, she got a theory that Pee-wee heard that conversation between Rhoda and Annette in the first book when she said it was just a one-night stand, and she feel like he been holding on to that this whole time. But I'm like, come on now. Come on now, Pee-wee, be serious. So we gonna see how this goes. It's still June 6th, it's just later on today. Pee-wee really left Annette. He really left her. Annette is heartbroken, she's furious, she is like, where did I go wrong? And so here come Gussie Mae. She coming over to the house. The reason she come over is because she's just frothing at the mouth because Pee-wee has been parading Lizzie around town as his new woman. Like, he has no shame about the fact that he has left Annette for this new lady. And Gussie Mae is like, how could you let this happen, Annette? Basically blaming Annette and projecting onto Annette because, the same thing happened to her in the first book. And, Lizzie is like, she's black. She's like super light skinned. So she looked like a white woman if you wouldn't know that she was black. And so Gussie Mae is like, oh, how could you let that white woman steal your man? How could you let this happen? I raised you better than that. And so Gussie Mae is basically just projecting onto Annette all her insecurities and all her feelings on when Frank left her. Annette is like, well, at least Charlotte not here to witness the scene like I was when I saw my dad leave my mom. It's just a hot mess. So Annette, of course, she heartbroken, she's furious, but she's like, she's not gonna let this stop her. She's like, she gotta start moving on. And she's not gonna forget the good times that she had with Pee-wee. And she starts reflecting on how she got here. And so, we go back to about the beginning of the year. Annette thought everything was good, but Pee-wee, he told her he needed a big change in his life. And she didn't understand what he meant. And he kept saying he's bored. And she's like, what are you bored with? You got everything you need. And like, she didn't tell him she agreed with him, but like, she was agreeing in her mind, yeah, you need a big change. What she was telling him was, Pee-wee, you got this, you got that. You need to count your blessings, because it's people in worse off positions than you. It's men in worse off positions who don't have what you have. As Annette is looking back on it, she realizes that Pee-wee was miserable, and he just seemed like he was slowly dying because he was bored and needed a change. And so that's where I stopped, and I'm just like, what in the world? I guess I'm gonna have to abandon my theory that Pee-wee is being forced to leave Annette. No, I guess he really just wanted to leave. I'm hurt because we on book 5, and I'm like, what do you mean you leaving, Pee-wee? We on book 5 of 6. What do you mean you're leaving? I'm like, Annette, if you was gonna leave, you should have left after you found out she cheated. Today is June 9th. I am on chapter 22 of 63, and I plan on finishing this whole book tonight. Pee-wee is bored. He has everything he could ever want, and he's not satisfied. And Annette tells him, like, maybe you just need like a vacation or something. He like, well, I don't want to go on vacation by myself, and he's bored because he has everything he wants, and he's just tired of the routine. And also, it's a new barbershop that's been open by another young black guy named Henry. He's in his 20s, and he's an ex-drug dealer, and he's opened his own barbershop as like his way of reforming. Some of the customers that Pee-wee had, especially a lot of the younger guys, and some of the younger women too, have gone to Henry. And so now Pee-wee mad about that because Henry's stealing all his customers. And so Annette suggests that he try to do something to like bring the business back, try to do something new, because Henry, his barbershop more up to date. It's more in line with what young people want, and Pee-wee's barbershop caters more to like people Pee-wee's age. And so Annette suggests that he bring in a manicurist, and Pee-wee, of course, he's not super sold on the idea, but Annette, she pushes for it, and she decides she gonna do it herself. Then she goes to visit her parents the next day because they throw a fit if she don't talk to them like once a day. Gussie Mae and Frank get on my nerves. She go over there to Gussie Mae restaurant. Gussie Mae, of course, feeding her all these big old meals that she been feeding her since she was a baby. And she get upset because Annette not trying to eat all that, because Annette trying to watch her weight. She gets on the phone with Rhoda because Rhoda usually will either come in to rescue her from having to spend time with her parents, or will call her on the phone to give her an excuse to get away. So she get on the phone with Rhoda. Rhoda tells her that Jade is once again back in town, and this time Jade is married. She got into it with her brother down in Alabama, so now she's back, and she back with a husband. I feel like Miss Mary don't know what she want to do with Jade, because Jade was barely relevant to the story in the last book. She was just there to be an annoyance to Annette, and it seemed like she's doing this again in this book. She's just here to be an annoyance. After God don't play, Jade don't have no purpose. So Annette, she's dreading Jade being back again, but Frank comes and gets her off the phone. He tells her that Gussie Mae suggests that she hire Elizabeth for the manicurist position because Elizabeth is homely, so she ain't got to worry about her running off with no man or like distracting away from the business and stuff like that. So Annette, she takes it into consideration and she starts interviewing people for the position. A lot of the people, they not serious about it or they want too much. So when she sits down with Elizabeth, Elizabeth is perfect. Elizabeth don't have no life. She live with her parents. She don't have no man. She's very homely, very plain. But don't get it twisted. Even though Elizabeth is homely and plain and living home with her parents, she has lived a life. She has had some experiences. She's had her share of men. She then did some things she wasn't supposed to be doing, like drugs and stuff like that. So she's lived a life, and she not a pushover either. Annette likes her, number one, because they go back, and number two, because she don't got a man, so she don't got to worry about her running off, getting married and stuff like that. You know, she'd give that little line that employers give when they want to hire somebody. Oh, we trying to be fair. Oh, you know, want to give other people opportunity to apply and stuff like that. But she wants Elizabeth. So while she's explaining this, here come Henry. You know, he started hitting on Annette, telling her she looked good, stuff like that. She done lost all that weight. Now she looked good. He started talking to Lizzie. Lizzie, you know, she let him know what's going on. He like, oh, well, I got a job in my barber shop. I need a cleaning lady. And Lizzie, because Annette has told her, oh, we got to look at other candidates. Lizzie, as she should, because like I believe, like I say, until I have signed my name on that dotted line and said I'm going to work for you, I don't have a job. And I'm getting wherever place is willing to hire me first. And that's what Lizzie's mentality is. So Annette is like, oh no, I'm not going to lose out on Lizzie. So she decides to be like, oh no, Henry, you too late. I'm going to hire Lizzie. And so she tells Lizzie she going to hire her. Then she get on the phone with Pee Wee. Pee Wee don't want her because Pee Wee thinks she's stupid. But Annette basically has to play on his insecurities to get her the job. Oh, well, you know, Henry offered her a job. And so that's where I'm at. Ned's still telling us how we got to the point of Lizzie stealing her man, basically. I don't know what I'm hopeful for. I'm not gonna lie, I like Pee Wee and Annette together, so I'm hopeful they'll get back together. But if they do end up getting divorced and going their separate ways, I hope that Annette's next man is somebody that's good man. Look, because Annette done had a whole bunch of trifling men in this series. We don't need another one. We don't need another one. Where I pick up at from the last time is Annette is fighting to get Lizzie this job, and Pee Wee, at first he don't want to hire her because he thinks that she's stupid. So then Annette's like, she not stupid. So then Pee Wee's like, well, isn't she kind of like a little bit ugly? And so Annette, you know, she checks him about not wanting to hire her because she stupid and ugly. And Pee Wee, he talking about, oh, you know, I don't discriminate against people with disabilities. You saw how nice I was to like my cousin who been in a wheelchair all his life, and what about Mr. Boatwright with his one peg leg? And I'm like, Pee Wee, of all the people to bring up for your defense, why would you bring him up? Of all the people to bring up, why Mr. Boatwright? So of course Annette, she says the same thing I said, and she uses that to her advantage because Pee Wee gets a feeling all bad. He agrees to hire Lizzie. So then Annette, she calls Rhoda to tell her the news, and she ends up getting Jade instead, and so she and Jade have words, and then Rhoda comes to the phone. And, you know, Rhoda, she's happy about the news. You know, hope Pee Wee will be happy. So then it's a very hard winter. It's to the point that Charlotte ends up having to not go to school because they can't get to school, but Pee Wee decides to stay home with her to make her do work around the house instead of letting her relax. Annette, she gets stuck at work, and so she tells Pee Wee she's gonna sleep in her office, but she ends up sleeping at the motel that she ended up having an affair with Lewis at because they got her opening. So she sleeps there, and Pee Wee, he gets super pissed off because she wasn't where she said she was going to be, and he accuses her of sleeping with somebody else, and she's like, no, I'm not. You promised you wouldn't bring this up, and yeah, here you go throwing it in my face when you don't get what you want. So they go at it, and then Pee Wee calls back an hour later apologizing. And the reason he's so tense is because business hasn't been improving for him. And Annette, she's tired of hearing that business is not improving. Pee Wee's complaining that Lizzie is too quiet. She doesn't really say much around the shop. So Annette's like, well, get her more involved in the conversation. Once again says that she's just too plain looking. She needs to like improve her looks. And so Annette's like, okay, maybe I can suggest to her to get a makeover. But Pee Wee's like, no, let me do it. So Annette don't know what happens. But about a week later, Gussie Mae calls her. Oh, you need to be careful having a pretty woman working around your man. And so Annette's like, what are you talking about? Did he fire Lizzie and hire some attractive Asian lady like he joked like he was gonna do? And Gussie Mae like, no, Elizabeth is the pretty woman I'm talking about. So basically Lizzie done got herself a makeover, and Gussie Mae, you know, she like, oh, you need to be careful about her being around your man, because, you know, men, they don't think with their heads like this. They be thinking with something else. Annette, she is frustrated because she like, first y'all don't want to hire her because she too plain. Now y'all don't want her to be there because she too pretty. What do y'all want? She is frustrated. She kind of like low-key tells her mama off. And Gussie Mae, she's like, well, I'm just trying to help you out. And so then Annette, she tries to go to lunch with Pee-wee, but Pee-wee's at lunch with Lizzie. So she ends up talking to Rhoda. Rhoda says that Jade is upset because her husband, Lovin, didn't get a supervisor job at Otis's steel mill. Instead, he's working like a regular desk job. As they're talking, Rhoda reveals that Jade wants a baby. And Annette is like going through hoops to avoid Jade but still spend time with Rhoda. And so one day she goes over to the house when Jade is not supposed to be like around. But of course Jade's around. She starts throwing shade. And so Annette throws some shade back. And then she and Rhoda, they get to talking. And Rhoda is basically just worried about Jade. She's worried that Jade is going to turn out how she is because she says that Jade is feisty like how her grandmother was. And as we all know, Rhoda's grandmother was a hot mess, and Rhoda took it upon herself to push that lady down the stairs to the point that she broke her neck and died. And then she makes this comment about how, like, oh, I'm worried about Jade. She got a short attention span. She be from here, 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 and I'm old school. But the context they're talking about it in is with Annette talking about how Rhoda, killed them 5 people. And so that's when Rhoda's like, oh no, I'm old school. You don't gotta worry about me. I'm like, so you an old school murderer, Rhoda? You proud to be an old school murderer? So Annette, after talking with Rhoda, she's thankful for her blessings. She counted her blessings, but she recalls this incident at her job where she hired this boy. Annette, she was suspicious of him because he was cute and he reminded her of Lewis. So she checked into his background and it turned out he was an ex-con with like fake references and fake education, but she decided she was going to take a chance on him and hire him anyways. And when she was going to tell him, oh, I'm going to hire you, he got the wrong impression and instead thought that she was going to tell him that she wasn't going to hire him. So he quit the job and he decided to take his own life. And his grandma got super upset about it and accused Annette of being cold-hearted. And so that's why Annette went so hard for getting Lizzie this job. She didn't want, another situation like that to be on her hands, even though it really wasn't on her hands in the first place. And so Pee-wee, he's seemed more lively since Lizzie started working at the shop. And Annette, she's been hearing about all the improvements he's made at the shop, like a new TV and Lizzie's makeover and stuff like that. But she hasn't had a chance to go over and see it for herself because every time she tries, something goes wrong. Like, for example, her dad got in a fight at the mall because he forgot where he parked and he assumed someone else's truck was his truck and he thought someone else was trying to take his truck, so he got in a fight and almost gotten arrested. Another time, Jade done beat her husband half to death because he backtalked her, and come to find out that's not the first time that she's beat him half to death. She beat him up when they was down in Alabama in church because he said hello to an ex-girlfriend. And so Jade, she been putting her hands on this man, and Rhoda been excusing it. And I'm like, where is the Rhoda who took care of Mr. Boatwright for Annette because he dared to abuse her? Where is that Rhoda? Because this is not the Rhoda that we have right now. Because why is she excusing her daughter putting her hands on her husband? And so Rhoda's excusing it, talking about oh, he shouldn't be making her angry. And Annette rightly calls her out about it. But Rhoda, being Rhoda, it's not clicking with her. Annette is worried it's not going to be the last time that Jade does something like this, and she's worried that Jade might go too far and end up being like Rhoda, but Rhoda's like, no, this is going to be the last time, and I'm going to make sure of it, so we're going to see who's right. So then Annette, after all of this chaos, she goes home, decides to make Pee-wee a nice special dinner. Charlotte complaining about the dinner, she mouthing off too much, so Annette pops her, and then Pee-wee, he don't come home. He don't come home at all that night. So Annette, she's frustrated, she irritated, she go to bed. 3:30 in the morning roll around, she get a call from Scary Mary. Scary Mary beating around the bush like, oh, where Pee-wee at? Where Pee-wee at? Is Pee-wee there? Talk about something. She want Pee-wee to fix her brakes, but what she really want to say is she saw Pee-wee riding down the street, propped back in his car like he was a pimp at 3:30 in the morning, and she wondering what he doing out so late because ain't nothing open. And that's like, Pee-wee grown, he can do what he want, and Scary Mary like, you need to keep an eye on him, basically, because he a man and he might do something that you don't want him to do. But Annette, she not trying to listen. Pee-wee, he comes home, but she don't see him because he leaves for work. When she gets up, she calls him and he's like, oh, he got caught up hanging out with some war buddies. And so she lets him know, oh, I wish you would let me know what's going on. And Pee-wee's like, I'm sorry, but you of all people should know what's going on since you still haven't come down to the shop yet to see the improvements. And so she, of course, wants to go, but of course, more stuff happens. But Pee-wee, he's not as annoyed with it as Annette would like him to be. And so when she finally gets down there, she's shocked about something she sees, and so that's where I'm at. It seems like it's too much going on, but nothing really happening, if that makes sense. I'm tired of Annette and Pee-wee. I'm tired of them. Annette is finally able to make it to the lunch that she and Pee Wee are supposed to have by basically avoiding all drama. So she finally gets over to that barber shop. It looks nice. She get in there, Lizzie telling a funny story. And she's enjoying it. And so then when everybody notices her, everybody gets all quiet and tense. And so Annette notices that Pee Wee is looking at her like he don't want her there. And so she's like, what's going on? Lizzie treating her like she don't want her there either. She knows something is up, but she's in denial. So she asks Pee Wee, oh hey, are we going to lunch? And Pee Wee acting like he don't want to go to lunch. So she get ready to leave. But before she leaves, she tell Pee Wee, can I talk to you outside? They go to talk outside, how good the shop looks, how much Lizzie has improved. Annette suggests that, maybe we should get Lizzie a man since she looking so good now. So after she makes a suggestion, Annette kisses Pee Wee. Pee Wee kisses her back, but he's like kissing her like super hard and stuff, and Annette is uncomfortable with it. She's like, yeah, something is wrong. So she goes and gets on the phone with Rhoda, asks Rhoda to meet her at lunch. Rhoda tries to tell her what she's found out, but Annette don't want to hear it because she's like, I don't want to hear no gossip. So Rhoda just basically tells her, just keep your eye on everybody and everything. And so then after that day, the next day is when they drop the news on her that they leaving. Annette, she heartbroken. She don't know what's going on, so she calls Rhoda, right? Rhoda tells her that she already knew that this was going on. Annette is like, what do you mean you already knew? Why didn't you tell me? And Rhoda's like, I tried, but you didn't want to listen. And then Rhoda tells her everybody in town knew. Everybody in town has been trying to drop hints to her, has been trying to let her know what's going on. Even Scary Mary rented them a room at her house because she's still in the business at 90. That's the night she tried to tell Annette, but Annette was not listening. She's upset. She's like, Rhoda, how could you not tell me? Rhoda says she wasn't trying to get in the middle of it. And she also says that Pee Wee found out about her and Bobby. It was kind of like, I can't tell you without him telling Otis about what I got going on. And so Annette is like, so you didn't want to tell because you didn't want to get caught. And Rhoda calls her out on it because she's like, well, Annette, you know about me and Bobby and you haven't told Otis. Keep in mind, when Otis found out about Pee Wee and Lizzie, he was pissed. Annette is like his closest woman friend. He don't know about Rhoda and Bobby, but Rhoda is sure that if he ever found out, he wouldn't leave her. And so, of course, Annette is upset with Rhoda that Rhoda didn't tell her, but she accepts Rhoda's reasoning. And basically, Pee Wee told Rhoda that he was going to leave Annette because Annette is too good of a woman for him to be sneaking around on her like that. And so Rhoda gave him an ultimatum. You tell her by tomorrow or I will tell her. And so Pee Wee decided to go ahead and tell her. And so Annette, she starts realizing that Pee Wee might not have been who she always thought he was. And then her parents and Scary Mary come by. And they come by, they being nosy, they trying to comfort her, they blaming her for running Pee Wee off, talking about what did you do to him to make him leave you for a white woman. My husband just left me and y'all blaming me. Like it's my fault that my husband left me for another woman. But I can't be surprised. I can't be surprised because Gussie Mae just projecting. Scary Mary just on Gussie Mae's side. And Frank, he trying not to get involved because he did the same thing. And so after they leave, Annette has Charlotte taken to their house and she soaks for about 2 days until Rhoda comes over and like, okay, no, get out the bed. We ain't doing this. You ain't finna be soaking over this man forever. And Annette, she's upset about it, of course. She don't know what she's going to do. Rhoda suggests that he's having a midlife crisis. Rhoda's like, if he's worth fighting for, you need to fight for him. You need to go beat Lizzie up. And Annette's like, I'm not fighting over no man that don't want to be here. She goes to work. Pee Wee comes to get his stuff while she's at work. She get home. Charlotte come back home. Charlotte already knows what's going on. We don't know how she found out, but she knew, and she comforts Annette. She's like, it's going to be all right. And she tells Annette that she just need to get a new man. She's like, it's not surprising to her. What's surprising to her is that the people their age is still getting down. And so Annette lets her know, like, you only 11 years old. You don't know nothing about life yet. And so we find out that Jade tried to turn Charlotte against her by telling her version of events of God don't play. But Charlotte don't care because Annette is her mama. She gonna be on her mama's side. And she also is like, you guys should have been more like Rhoda and Otis and Jade and Laverne. They got good marriages, which proves that Charlotte don't know nothing. Scary Mary drops by and lets Annette know that Pee Wee is lawyering up. So Annette is pissed off because Pee Wee told her he wasn't going to divorce her. He was just leaving her for Lizzie. But obviously that's not true. And so she's pissed off. And so she's like, I'm going to get a lawyer too. So she starts lawyering up. She goes to work the next day. Pee Wee calls her. He's sounding all sad and stuff. And so Annette's like, Pee Wee, it's not too late. If you want to come home, we can still work this out. And he like, I'm in love with Lizzie. I'm not coming home. He basically just wants to let Annette know that he's not going to try to run her for money. He going to pay for the utilities. and make sure she's still financially stable. And he just wants to, be able to still spend time with Charlotte and have her come stay with him at some point. And Annette's like, I don't want her around Lizzie. And so then Pee Wee, he starts going off about, you can't keep my daughter from me, and there's Charlotte even mine. And I'm like, Pee Wee, we already went through this, and God still don't like ugly. We already went over that Charlotte is yours because who else could Annette have slept with during the time? She was only sleeping with you. She wasn't like you running back and forth between all these different women. Mr. Oh, I'm not leaving you for another woman, but yeah, here we are. You done left her for Lizzie. Mr. I've had my fun. I'ma stay for life. You're not staying for life, Pee Wee. And it's not to say that Annette is not innocent, because she herself suspects that Pee Wee's only doing this to get back at her for the affair that she had with Lewis. She gets pissed off that he insinuates that, and she's like, of course, Charlotte is yours. Who else would she be? If you don't believe me, get a DNA test. I don't want her around your woman, and it don't even matter because I got me a new man. So basically, she lied and said she got a new man. That's where we're at. I'm tired of Annette and Pee Wee. I'm tired of y'all. It will not surprise me if Pee Wee and Lizzie don't work out and he realizes, just like Annette realized in the last book where she almost lost when she cheated on Pee Wee, and so she realizes just how blessed she was to have him. It will not shock me if Pee Wee comes to that same realization in this book and decides to come crawling back to Annette. And Annette takes him back. She don't want to still be in love with him, but she's still in love with him because, she like it's going to be a little bit hard to get over him. So it won't surprise me if he comes crawling back once he realizes that life with Lizzie is not what it's cracked up to be. So it's June 10th. It's about 2:30 in the morning. I am in the home stretch. Annette, she started looking for a new man. She calls Rhoda and she tells Rhoda, oh, hey, let's go to the Red Rose. Rhoda says, oh, well, Bobby's back in town because his wife left him, I guess, for the person she was staying in Paris with. Rhoda's like, if we meet, I'm bring Bobby with me. And Annette's like, that's fine. And, she been ducking Gussie Mae because Gussie Mae trying to, check on her, make sure everything's good. But Annette don't want to talk to her, so she ducking her. She goes to the Red Rose. Rhoda's there, but it's not with Bobby. She's with Otis, Jade, and Lovin. So Annette, she ducks out. And as she ducks out, she started running. And she hears footsteps behind her. She turned around. It's Jacob Brewster from God Still Don't Like Ugly, who she dumped at the party for Jerome. When I was reading it, I'm like, who is Jacob? When he said, oh, I haven't seen you since the party when you dumped me for Jerome, I was like, oh, that was you. Okay. So, of course, they get to talking, experienced a few divorces of his own. Annette just randomly kisses him. And the reason she does this is because she saw Pee Wee and Lizzie driving by. So she kisses him. Pee Wee and Lizzie, of course, notice they looking all shocked and in awe. And so then after they drive past, Annette stops and Jacob, he all giddy, and he invites Annette back into the bar for a drink. So they go in there, they sit down with Rhoda and them. They're in there because it's Jade's 21st birthday. Jade, of course, she's sitting there doing what she do, getting drunk, throwing shade. And so Annette, of course, she matching the energy. And then she and Rhoda go off to the bathroom for a little bit. Annette's like, why are they here? I thought you told me you was bringing Bobby. Bobby didn't want to come because he was too tired. And Rhoda's like, oh, Jade said she wanted to have her first drink. And Annette's like, her first drink? And Rhoda's like, yes, her first drink. So Rhoda's still playing naive. And so they get to talking about Pee Wee, and Rhoda tells Annette that Pee Wee been taking Lizzie to Antonio Santi's, and Annette gets upset. Pee Wee wouldn't do that for her, so she mad because Pee Wee, he parading Lizzie around town, he balling out on her, and yet he didn't do none of that for Annette. And so Annette, of course, she gets annoyed by that. She's still mad at Rhoda for not telling her about the affair, and they get back out there. Jay start throwing some more shade. Apparently she knows Jacob too. Her and Lovin go dance, Rhoda and Otis go dance, and Annette stays at the table with Jacob to get to know him. Come to find out, Jacob is the father of Michael, the boy who ended his life. She lets him know, hey, I was a supervisor, and the situation isn't how it was told to you. Michael and Jacob, they didn't have a close relationship, and they were just starting to get one when he died. And so Jacob feels really sad having lost him. So they bond over the grief, and she tells him that, she has Charlotte, but she wanted more kids, but it was too late because she had Charlotte late in life. Jade comes back. She started throwing more shade. And Annette tells her that she feels sorry for her because Jay used to be really sweet. And Jay's like, I'm still sweet. Everybody tells me I'm sweet. And so everybody at the table enabling her. And so Annette's like, yeah, no. She takes Jacob home with her to eat dinner because she invites him over for dinner. I'm guessing a few days later, Pee Wee calls drunk. Annette don't answer the phone, so he rants on the answering machine. He's drunk and he's mad because Annette had him served divorce papers while he was at Antona Santi's, and so he's pissed off about that. Annette, she don't care. She starts preparing dinner for Jacob because he's coming over to eat. And he's been around Charlotte. They have gotten along well. Charlotte likes him. Annette hears a car pull up. She thinking it's Jacob. No, it's Pee Wee. He's like, what's going on? I told you I didn't want a divorce. And Annette's like, well, I heard you was lawyering up. So what was you lawyering up for? And she tells him that Scary Mary's the one who told her. Pee Wee gets mad about that. He says the only reason he took Lizzie to Scary Mary's was because she got locked out of her house. She didn't have a key, and there wasn't no motel rooms available. I'm like, Pee Wee, come on now. But of course, Annette buys the story. I didn't buy it, but Annette buys it. And he also says that the lawyering up was because of a tax situation that had nothing to do with the divorce. And so Annette, they have some words, and then Pee Wee leaves. But before he gets ready to leave, he noticed, she all nice, dressed up, got dinner cooking. He like, what's going on here? She like, I'm about to have company. And, he start acting jealous. And I'm like, Pee Wee, bye. Bye, Pee Wee, because what you acting jealous for when you left her for Lizzie? She tells Pee Wee that she not chasing behind Jacob because, of course, he acting jealous. Because she says that no man is irresistible enough for her to be chasing after. He's like, even me. And she's like, especially you. And I'm like, I know that's right. Because, Pee Wee, you had it all. Pee Wee just don't make sense to me. He do, but he don't. Because this is how Pee Wee was acting in the second book. So it makes sense that he acting like this now. But in the second book, he was doing all that because he wanted to be with Annette. He wasn't ready to commit. And she was with Jerome at the time. So it made sense why he was being all jealous and doing the most and going back and forth, back and forth. But in this book, it don't make sense because you married to Annette already. But you talking about you want something new. You want to be with Lizzie. So why are you acting all jealous when she starts trying to move on? Granted, I don't support Annette moving on while she's still married to Pee Wee. If she gonna move on, she needs to divorce him first. As long as she's still married, she's still married. But what I'm saying is, it don't make sense for Pee Wee to be doing all this because you don't want to be with her, but you don't want her to be with nobody else. Pee Wee is frustrating me in this book, and it's pissing me off because in the previous books, I was for the most part on Pee Wee's side. And so he leaves. Jacob pulls up in this nice new car. And Annette is shocked that he got all this money. Turns out he got all this money from a life insurance policy that his mom left him. He and his mama, they didn't get along, and he regrets it. And he works at a brickyard. And he has a few habits that Annette don't like, but she lets it slide for a little bit until he starts doing a little too much. She has to let him know. And so he just says that he's sorry. He's just really excited to be around her. And then they sleep together. And then after they sleep together, they go upstairs and they fall asleep in bed. And then he gets up and leaves around midnight. And Annette, she tells Rhoda the next day that, even though she likes Jacob for his company, she don't really think they're going to be together for long because he comes by unannounced a lot. He's not very hygienic. And he's doing too much. And Rhoda's like, well, girl, maybe give him a chance. He might be what you need. She tells Rhoda she's not going to go through with the divorce. And so Rhoda's like, okay, but you need to make sure that your finances are straight. Make sure all that stuff is going to Charlotte just in case something happens to you, because the last thing you want is for everything that you have to go to Pee Wee and to have Lizzie living off all your hard work and hard-earned money. And so Annette agrees. And of course, when Pee Wee says he don't want a divorce, I'm suspecting he don't want the divorce because if they get a divorce, he probably not going to benefit financially. Yeah, he's doing well with the barbershop, but Annette also does well, and she owns the house. It's in her name only. So I'm thinking he don't want a divorce because he don't want to lose out. And so, of course, Annette takes Rhoda's advice, and she decides that she's just going to drop Jacob. So Jacob drops by the next day with some roses because he plans to take her to dinner, but she didn't know because he left a message with the secretary, but she didn't get it. And so she checks him, and she's like, oh, next time, just tell me. And Jacob, of course, he's like, oh, okay. And they go out to dinner, right? They go to this expensive restaurant that Annette eats at frequently. She's a regular customer. People know them there. They get a $190 bill. And Jacob tells Annette, oh, hey, go warm up the car while I pay the bill. And Annette, like a dummy, goes out to the car. I'm like, Annette, come on now. This is one of the oldest tricks in the book. If somebody tells you, go warm up the car while I'm paying the bill, what you think finna happen? And of course, what happens. He come running out like, drive, drive, drive. She like, what's going on? We gotta go. She figures out he ain't paid the bill. She like, why you ain't paid the bill? I eat there all the time. We could get arrested. Why you embarrass me like that? He says he did it because when he ate there with his mama, they disrespected his mama by not making the food how she liked it. And so when he called up there to complain, they hung up on him. And so this was him getting his revenge. Annette is pissed off about this. And I was like, Annette, this is what you get for being stupid, because come on now. And so she tells Rhoda, but she doesn't tell her about the part with the drive. She just tells him about the dinner. And Rhoda, of course, is like, she's excited about the relationship, and she encouraged her to get in a relationship. Annette's not planning on it. And so then she goes and sees her lawyer. The lawyer agrees with Rhoda, and they revise the will. And so after they revise the will, she runs into this former coworker, and like he's talking about like how he got to get over on the white people because they're not right with his money. And he tells her that she looks like Annette, but he's still thinking like of Annette before she lost all the weight. And he starts complaining about her and ranting about her. And so he asks her what her name is. She's like, oh yeah, I'm Annette. And so he gets all nervous and he runs off, and she's feeling sad about that until she gets home and Jacob comes by and cheers her up. And so while they're having their good time, Pee-wee comes with Charlotte, and when he notices Jacob, he sits there trying to intimidate Jacob, but Jacob's not fazed by it. And he basically says, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And Pee-wee gets upset about this, so Annette tells him to leave, so he leaves. And then she checks Jacob for saying that, and Jacob's like, it's true. And Annette's like, we're not really serious enough for you to be doing stuff like this. And Jacob's like, that's where you're wrong. We are getting serious. And so Annette's like, Lord, what have I got myself into? Jacob drops by unannounced another day. Annette, she not trying to fool with him, so she don't let him in. And then Charlotte lets him in the house, and they've gotten really friendly. He's brought mangoes for them. Charlotte reveals that Jacob, took her to the movies because she was asking, oh, you gonna take me to the movies on Saturday? And Annette's like, well, I did not know about this. Come to find out, Jacob's been spending time with Charlotte apart from Annette, and Annette didn't know, so of course she tells Jacob, please don't spend time with my child. And I don't know, because of course she's having flashbacks to Mr. Boatwright. And Jacob, he's like, oh yes, I'm sorry, I understand, but Charlotte's safe with me, I'm not gonna do nothing to her, I just assumed it was alright. And Annette's like, I appreciate that you so understanding, but please don't do nothing without me knowing. Annette, she wants to, let him down easily because she wants to weasel her way out the situationship with him. And so she goes off to do something in the house. And when she comes back, Jacob's sitting up with his shirt off and he eating a plate of food, and Charlotte got her arm wrapped around his neck. And so she's nervous that something might be going on that she don't want to go on, because she don't want Charlotte going through the same thing that she went through. And I'm 100% on Annette's side. I'm hoping that she's wrong and that nothing is going on, because it's been established that Jacob is not the brightest tool in the shed. He's not the brightest crayon in the box. I'm hopeful that he's just a well-intentioned guy who just didn't think about it. But even then, it's like, how could you not think about that? Like, why would you spend time with somebody's child and not let the parent know? But like I said, he's not the brightest tool in the shed, so I'm hoping that it's just, just a slight misunderstanding. But we'll see. It's almost about 5:30 in the morning. I just finished the book. I'm tired of Annette and Pee-wee. Rhoda, she tells Annette that she thinks Annette is being paranoid, and Annette rightfully is like, no, I'm not. I am concerned about my daughter's safety. Rhoda tells her, if it's such a concern, then just dump Jacob and don't date no other men, because this is always going to be a concern. Vernie comes over to talk to Annette because Jade has been running him ragged and he feels like he has nobody to talk to about it. So he comes over to see Annette. She's the only person in town that he knows outside of Jade's family. Jade told him the same story that she told everybody else, that it was Annette's fault that they fell out, but Annette gives him the real story. He has a mom and 3 sisters. His dad is dead. Met Jade in a nightclub, and the next thing he knew, they was married because she basically kept him drunk to the point that he didn't know anything about what was going on. He's supposed to be taking care of his mama and his sisters because his dad is dead and he's supposed to be taking care of them, but Jade won't let him. Jade is keeping him basically locked up in the house. He's going crazy. And so Annette gives him some encouragement. And it's like, if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. And so he thanks her and he leaves. And then Jacob pops up talking about who is that leaving your house? And so Annette, she grabs a broom to defend herself, and she's like, Jacob, you don't tell me what to do. And Jacob's like, oh, I'm your man, I can tell you what to do. And he calling her all out her name. So she says, we not together no more. She slams the door in his face. So then the next day, Rhoda drops by Annette's job because she was worried about Annette, because she was trying to get in contact with her, but Annette was not picking up. Jade put her hands on Vernie again when she got home from the bar. Rhoda says the same thing she said last time. He needs to stop provoking her. She's been trying to get him to stand up for himself, but he's just so docile. And Annette tells her that Jade and Jacob both need professional help. And so Jacob calls Annette to apologize. When she gets home, Pee Wee drops Charlotte off at home. She has all this stuff with her, so Pee Wee stays for a little bit. Annette, at first, she tells him he can stay, but then she realizes what she said. She's like, no, you can't stay, you gotta go. Pee Wee don't want to go. So Annette, she cooks up a scheme to invite Jacob over. So when he comes over, Pee Wee gets pissed off, and that causes him to leave. But before he leaves, he's like, oh yeah, and thanks for dropping the divorce, Annette, being petty. And Annette's like, oh, I didn't drop the divorce, I just paused it. We still gonna get divorced eventually, just not right now. 1 week later, Jacob is a hot mess again because Annette gets a debt folder, and come to find out, Jacob did not pay his mama's funeral bills. So now it's been passed out to Annette because he has defaulted. So Annette is disappointed in him, and she's got to confront him. She had dropped Charlotte off at Pee Wee's for the weekend, and so when she calls Pee Wee to ask him, oh, when are you dropping Charlotte back off? Pee Wee's like, I don't have Charlotte. And Annette's confused because the people at the school told her that her dad picked her up, and so she realizes that Jacob probably picked her up. Pee Wee starts going off because he's like, where's my daughter? What's going on? Jacob picked up Charlotte, took her to the mall, and he drops her off at home. So Annette's like, okay, Charlotte's safe. But Pee Wee's pissed off. He's going off as he should be, because why is this man picking up my daughter and you don't know about it and I don't know about it? And we sitting up here wondering where our daughter is. But Annette is like, oh, you're overreacting. She fuzzes at Charlotte for going off with Jacob and not saying nothing. And Charlotte is confused. Annette has to finally admit what Mr. Boatwright did to her to Charlotte. And Charlotte is shocked. She's like, oh my gosh, that happened to you? And Annette's like, yes. And she explains that that's why she's so concerned about Charlotte's safety. Charlotte understands, but she says that nothing like that is happening to her. So Annette tells her she doesn't want Charlotte hanging out with Jacob unsupervised anymore. And so then Gussie Mae calls Annette because Annette has been ducking and dodging them. She saw Scary Mary out in public one day. She hit that corner so fast. Scary Mary talking about some Annette was avoiding her, so Gussie Mae called her to confront her. She lets Annette know that Charlotte's friend Patsy is pregnant. She doesn't understand why she keeps letting Charlotte hang out with that girl when she's pregnant. So Annette is like, what? She rushes up to Charlotte's room. She's like, why you ain't tell me your friend Patsy was pregnant and I've been letting you hang out with her? And Charlotte's like, oh, I thought everybody knew. And that's like, I didn't know. And so she's kind of sad about that because she's the last to find out about all this stuff that keeps going on. And so Scary Mary drops by and Charlotte becomes the topic of discussion because Annette is like, raising Charlotte on my own is hard. Scary Mary is like, yeah, I know. And so Annette asks her, oh, how did you become a madam? Scary Mary says that it wasn't no opportunities when she was young. She did what she had to do, and she found out if she could get other people to agree to sell their bodies and give her the money, that's what she was going to do. So Annette is like, that's terrible. But Scary Mary's like, I did what I had to do. And you sitting up here worried about Charlotte, and she ain't even a teenager yet. So imagine how much worse it's going to be when she becomes a teenager. And Annette is not looking forward to that. And she encourages Annette to get Pee Wee back for Charlotte's sake because even though Pee Wee is still part of Charlotte's life, he's not in the house. And she's like, he needs to be in the house to be an effective father. And so then the next day, Annette asks Jacob to sit down and talk with her. So he agrees to take her to Antonio Santi's. They get out there, and before Annette can even get the words out about the debt, he grips her up by her wrist. He's like, who is this man you trying to leave me for? You ain't going nowhere, you mine. Annette's like, you're tripping. I'm not trying to leave you. I'm trying to talk about something else. Jacob is not trying to hear it. And so, of course, the staff, they love Annette at the restaurant. So they ask her if everything's fine. And she's like, everything's fine. I'm just trying to leave. And so when she gets up to leave, Jacob puts his hands on her. So then the cops are called. And it's the same cop that handled the incident between Jade and Vernie when she put her hands on Vernie the first time. Jacob gets paranoid. He's like, I can't go back to jail. Annette is like, go back. When was you there the first time? And so the cop, he escorts Annette home and he tells Jacob to stay away from her. But of course, as he's escorting Annette home, he himself is trying to hit on Annette, but she not having it. So when she gets home, she goes over to Rhoda's house. When she goes over to Rhoda's house, it's all these cops. It's an ambulance out there. They won't tell her nothing. The police won't let her inside. She goes back home. Scary Mary comes over. She asks Scary Mary what's going on. Scary Mary taking too long to get to the point. And so thankfully Rhoda calls. Rhoda tells her that Vernie finally snapped It got so bad that Jade had to go to the hospital. She is in the hospital fighting for her life while Vernie is sitting in jail. She tells Scary Mary to call Pee Wee and let him know what's going on, but Lizzie picks up the phone. She playing games. Scary Mary goes off. Annette goes off. They both let Pee Wee know what's going on, and then they head over to the hospital where Pee Wee and Charlotte are at the hospital too. So everybody at the hospital, Jade is going to be fine. So then they all go back to Rhoda's house. And so on the way, Annette and Charlotte, they're riding in the car. Charlotte starts talking about how Pee Wee and Lizzie got roaches. Their house is dirty. Lizzie is not a good housekeeper at all. Pee Wee is tired of her. He wants to go back to Annette, but he doesn't think she'll take him back. And so Annette is ecstatic to hear this, but she don't want to let on. They get to the house and Pee Wee, he hugs her, and then she goes talk to Rhoda to comfort Rhoda. And Rhoda basically explains that Jade got pissed off at Vernie and attacked him with a lamp. And so Rhoda, Otis, and Bobby had to pull them apart. And so Jade acted like she was calm. And then she grabbed the lamp again to try and attack him. But Vernie snatched the lamp out of her hand and brought it down over her head. And so Rhoda's like, how could he do that to my baby? And Annette's like, well, you know, he was only defending himself. And since he was only defending himself, you gotta do the right thing. But Rhoda's not trying to hear it because she is just so wanting to be willfully ignorant about Jade. Scary Mary, she starts like taking care of everybody in the house, you know, giving them alcohol, feeding them, making sure everybody's good. And everybody gets to praying for Jade. And then after the prayer, you find out that Jock is in an asylum. Poor Jock. I'm sad about what happened to him. He was one of my favorite characters in this series. Annette, of course, is trying to tend to Charlotte, who is sitting with Pee Wee. And so Scary Mary puts them on blast. And so Annette, she plays the scorned woman role. She's like, oh, well, Pee Wee, when you gonna come get your stuff? Because I'm tired of it being in my house. And so after that, Pee Wee keeps looking at her. She's like, what do you keep looking at me for? So then he leaves, and then she leaves. And they both end up at her house. And Annette is pissed off because she like, what are you doing at my house? They talk for a little bit, and Pee Wee refuses to leave because he wants to make sure they're okay. And then Annette gets a phone call from a neighbor, and the neighbor tells her that somebody, Jacob, has been spying on her. So she asks Pee Wee to stay the night because she's scared, and he does. And so then in the morning, he cooks breakfast for her, and then he's gone. Charlotte asks, are they going to get back together? There's no plans for it. And Charlotte has just been acting very grown, been in grown folk business. So Annette let her know she need to get her life together. And she realizes that she needs to tighten up with raising Charlotte. And so Rhoda is avoiding talking to Annette, and Annette gets in contact with Jacob to get his debt sorted out. But he thinks she's calling to get back together with him. But she's like, no, we need to talk about your funeral debt. And of course, he starts cursing her out, and he tells her not to call him no more. So she decides to have his wages garnished since he not gonna handle the debt. And so Pee Wee, of course, he calls her because he wants to get a security system installed in the home. And Annette, of course, is thankful for this. And he lets it slip that Lizzie is mad at him. Pee Wee tells her that Lizzie says she gonna put her in her place. And so Annette gets upset about this, and she tells Pee Wee that he needs to get Lizzie. So then the next day she goes to work. She calls Pee Wee's barbershop, and Lizzie picks up, and Annette goes off. So then Rhoda calls her. Rhoda lets her know that Jade is going to be fine and that they have decided to go ahead and do the right thing and bail Vernie out of jail. But he wants to get a divorce and go back home, but Jade doesn't want that because she thinks it would be too embarrassing. And so Annette fills her in on what's going on with Jacob. She doesn't tell her everything, just that they're not seeing each other no more. And Rhoda asks her how is Pee Wee taking the news that Lizzie is leaving to go work for Henry. And Annette's like, I didn't know this. So she calls Pee Wee. Pee Wee didn't know. Come to find out, Lizzie has been cheating on Pee Wee with Henry's uncle, and she's leaving his shop to go work at Henry's shop, and is probably going to take all of her clients with her. And so then Jade suffered a setback because Vernie might leave. Pee Wee calls because he's concerned about Charlotte. Turners, who Charlotte has been hanging out with, who live across the street, they're wild. They don't have no home training. They doing a bunch of stuff they ain't got no business doing at their age. And so Annette agrees to talk to Charlotte with Pee Wee. So when Annette gets home to talk to Charlotte, she goes in Charlotte's room and she finds Charlotte's underwear with blood in it. And she has another flashback to Mr. Boatwright. So she thinks somebody has done something to Charlotte. She is super upset. Charlotte comes in the room. She's like, Mama, what's going on? Annette is super upset. She's questioning Charlotte on everything. Charlotte is confused, but she admits that she has smoked weed once. Annette thinks it's because of the Turners, but it's really because Pee Wee, Bobby, and Otis got careless and she smoked it, but she didn't like it. So she tells Annette she's not doing that no more because it's terrible. Pee Wee's not able to get over there because he had a situation with Lizzie. He makes this comment about how did she talk to Charlotte about the Turners because the young people are out of control, and then it's like the old people out of control too because y'all done got careless about Charlotte, and she not gonna be around y'all no more when y'all doing these activities. And so Pee Wee don't got nothing to say, so he hangs up. She grilling Charlotte, but Charlotte not telling her what she wants to know, so Annette takes her to the doctor, and the doctor tells her what I suspected. Charlotte got her period. And then it's like, that's not possible. She's only 11. And then she realizes that she was also 11 when she got her first period. So Charlotte's like, so are you satisfied now? And then it's like, why didn't you tell me? And Charlotte's like, I tried, but you didn't want to listen. You kept thinking somebody did something to me. And so Annette is embarrassed. She and Charlotte, they have a talk and they come to an understanding. For the first time, she feels really old. And Jacob, he ends up quitting his job and moving to Canada so that they can't collect. And Gussie Mae calls Annette and tells her she needs to get Pee Wee back now that he's no longer with Lizzie. But Annette, she's not considering taking Pee Wee back. And so Jade gets released from the hospital again. And Vernie plans to divorce her. He calls Annette and thanks her. He's going back to Alabama. He don't want nothing else to do with Jade. And he had her serve divorce papers while she was at the Red Rose. Jade had a panic attack and basically had a breakdown, hit her head on the table, and is going right back to the hospital. And Pee Wee, he's been coming around, checking up on Annette and stuff like that. But he's not really trying to come back and be together. And so Rhoda suggests it might be another woman in the picture. And Annette's like, well, if it is or if it ain't, whatever. I can do better by myself. And so then Rhoda, of course, she's stressed and she's upset with Vernie because how could he do this to Jade? And Annette's like, girl, and she's considering divorcing Pee Wee. And so the book ends with Annette and Pee Wee sitting down and having a talk. Annette wants them to figure out what they're going to do. He's like, if you want us to stay together, we can stay together. If you want us to get divorced, we can get divorced. I just want you to be happy. They want to be together, but they don't want to say it. They going back and forth, tit for tat. Oh, you cheated on me. Well, you cheated on me too. And you left me for another woman. Well, you left me for another man. That's what they doing. They want to be together, but they too prideful to say it. Rhoda, she's hopeful that Vernie will come back. Annette, she don't want Vernie to come back, but she tells Rhoda that anything is possible because she don't want to hurt Rhoda's feelings. Even though Jacob turned out to be very possessive and horrible to Annette, I am glad that he was at least not a child molester. I know that's sad because he was still a terrible person, but at least he wasn't a child molester, and at least he meant it when he said he had no intentions of hurting Charlotte. Now, with that being said, we don't know if it could have got to that point, and he did put his hands on Annette. I'm not excusing him. Yeah, he had to go. I'm not surprised that he was like that, because he was like that in the second book. I finished reading God Ain't Through Yet. This might be my favorite cover of the series. This and the cover for God Don't Like Ugly. They're just the most interesting covers, and this one's really eye-catching. It's really just it's intriguing, but unfortunately I think the cover is the only thing I really liked about this book. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. It wasn't a bad book, and it's not the weakest book in the series. In my opinion, the weakest book in the series is God Still Don't Like Ugly. As far as this book goes, it felt like it was too much going on. It felt like it was just a bunch of stuff going on, and there wasn't no real resolution. It had a really strong start with Pee Wee leaving the net, and it just kind of fizzled into a whole bunch of just drama for no reason. Pee Wee was the one that was being irritating the most in this book. We don't get no explanation for why he did what he did. He just, oh, I'm bored and I want to change. And I'm like, okay. And then the whole book he was acting jealous about Annette. I'm like, why are you doing all this if you left and you so in love with Lizzie? And of course, come to find out, it's trouble in paradise over there with Lizzie, and he wants to come back, but he's too prideful to say that he wants to come back. So that's why I gave the book a 3.5, because even though the storyline was interesting and it made sense, it seemed like it was too much going on. There was just too much, and it just seemed like it was just drama for the sake of drama. With that being said, getting to my theory, in God Ain't Blind, Mary Monroe, she writes a dedication to her mother because her mother died like right after the publication of God Don't Like Ugly. It was a beautiful dedication, but in that dedication she says that her mom used to say all these phrases, and she went on to list more sayings that her mom would say. So I believe that this book, the reason why it didn't seem like it was no real resolution is because it was setting up for future storylines for the series. I feel like that's what was going on, but the publisher told her that the next book in the series, God Don't Make No Mistakes, that was going to be the last one and she needs to wrap it up. And that's another reason why I gave it a 3.5, is because I feel like this book was really just to set up for future storylines in the series that she was planning to explore. I feel like she had way more books planned for this series than just what she ended up getting published. And when she wrote this book, they hadn't told her yet the next one was going to be the last one. When the next one ended up having to be the last one, you know, I feel like she kind of just had to kind of like wrap it up. And we going to see how she did wrapping up the series. I hope it's not a flop. It's not the weakest in the series to me, but it is definitely on the weaker side of the series.